Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Welcome to my channel. My name is Samuel and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, because I don't want to do it alone. Who doesn't want to make self-growth normal? Then make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It helps with ranking and SEO and all this other stuff, and I really appreciate it because so much work goes into making these videos. The author says in the beginning that much of this book is about the biases of intuition, and however that the focus on error does not degrade human intelligence any more than the attention on disease in medical texts denies good health. There are 5 parts and let's talk about them. Part 1 is the 2 systems. This is a very well-known book in psychology. Today, I have heard about it in so many other books. So many interviews, people bring it up. And I think that this part 1, accounts for 20% of the book that is the reason for 80% of those occurrences. What happens around us is what we subconsciously link to our presents, futures, and pasts. Part 1 explores the famous, the notorious thinking systems 1 and 2. 1 is where you think in the moment, and 2 is where you think outside of the moment. Or the author says in part 5, which is called the 2 selves, one self is the experiencing self, and I think he says that another one is the experienced self. I kind of regret not checking this book out before Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, or Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini, or The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, or Subconscious by Leonard Mladenov, because this book is so richly packed with examples proving ideas in those books, even though this book has influenced the writings of those authors and it is mentioned in plenty of those books, that I just wonder why I didn't look at these examples first and then unpack the different ways in which they can be interpreted. Part 2 is heuristics. I've heard the word heuristics many times and I never took the time to look it up, but I did, and it is any approach to problem solving or self-discovery that employs a practical method that is not guaranteed to be optimal, perfect, or rational, but which is nevertheless sufficient for reaching an immediately short-term goal. So basically my life, and probably yours too, or at least the type of persons who frequently watches my videos. Bias, I kind of knew the definition of, but to look into it a little bit deeper, it means prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another. Just to be looking to the technical definition, which is usually considered to be unfair in a way. And I feel like biases are so difficult for many of us not to be sort of blinded by. The anchor is a popular bias or concept that the author talks about. And by the time I heard about it, I was like, you know, I'm starting to see the value in this book beyond simply systems 1 and 2. Part 3 is Overconfidence, and the author does of course mention Nassim Taleb's The Black Swan, with the fallacies that that author talks about in that book. That book is just a very extreme, childish sort of, at the same time more adult-ish type of book. It's a more extreme take on that stuff than this book is. But it's where we think we understand a lot based on what we already understand. And it's interesting how the author of Thinking in this part talks about the connections between intuition and capitalism. He talks in this part a lot about like investing in the stock market. It's interesting to me how so much of investing, like successful investing at least, seems to have to do with mindset and, as they say, knowing oneself. And this one talks about, you guessed it, yellow penguins and poisonous cheese puffs. I'm kidding. Obviously it talks about choices. Because of the narrative fallacy, you probably thought I was gonna say choices. But I ended up saying choices anyway. I feel like that wasn't the best example. I try to be transparent in these reviews. The author talks about these effects, or the theories that affect our choices from small to large scale ones. There were a few of them, but my favorite was probably the endowment effect, which is basically loss aversion, because you'd rather keep what you have than at least risk some of it, with the promise of gaining and ending up with more ultimately. This is because of course, the uncertainty of whether you'll gain from it is too much for your or anyone's not sufficiently self-conditioned lizard brain. So it gets overridden and you don't know what to do and you start twitching, and no, that's not really what happens. Well, at least normally, I'm pretty sure. Never happened to me, but my bipolar medication is also an anti-epileptic. Hashtag
Lamictal Gang.
The author talks about the sunken cost fallacy, which if you've been in an economics class or something in high school, you probably already know about that. But if you don't, I'll put it this way. It keeps too many people in far too many poor jobs, unhappy marriages, and unpromising research projects. Also, what the differences are between decisions we make that are frame-bound, what the author calls it, frame-bound, versus reality-bound. The better one in the long term speaking is obviously reality-bound, but the whole idea of that is just insane to think about, literally. Using all of these things in order to truly live one's best life is pretty much the essence of part 5, which is like, it's amazing. It's like one of those parts where it's like the grand finale. But overall, I would probably consider, going back into this book, I thought it was just really boring. And then the further I got into it, I was like, wow, I do get why people like I understand the hype. But I do think that there's a lot more to this book than simply systems 1 and 2. I think the rest of the book is just very underrated. That being said, I would consider, despite the myriad of examples and trials and tests and studies the author briefly kind of sifts through per each chapter, or maybe even because of it. Not just that, but also the different areas of thought that they explore and their relationships with the two systems. I would consider this book probably the closest thing, at least that I'm aware of at the moment, to a modern Iliad of psychology. Quotes: "Information is nothing more and nothing less than recognition. Her favorite position is beside herself, and her favorite sport is jumping to conclusions. I don't spend my time taking polls around the world to tell me what I think is the right way to act. I just got to know how I feel. Democracy is inevitably messy in part because the availability and effect heuristics that guide citizens' beliefs and attitudes are inevitably biased, even if they generally point in the right directions. The feedback to which life exposes us is perverse. The more luck there is, the less there is to be learned. There was a moment in time just before an egg was fertilized when there was a 50-50 chance that the embryo that became Hitler could have became a female. For the poor, costs are losses. When an unlikely event becomes the focus of attention, we assign it much more weight than its probability deserves. Nature has placed mankind under the sovereignty of two foreign masters, pain and pleasure. You seem to be devoting your entire vacation to the construction of memories. Perhaps you should put away the camera and enjoy the moment, even if it's not very memorable. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is, as long as you are thinking about it. Freedom is free of charge. Direction 1. I recommend this book for really anyone who's interested in psychology. It's probably like an amazing starter book. Again, I do kind of recommend not starting with this book before going into all the other ones I mentioned earlier in the review. Direction 2. If you like this book, I guess I recommend all the other ones that I talked about in the review, but starting out, probably either Blink by Malcolm Gladwell or The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. That dude's a gangster. I feel like I recommend that book more than any others in any of my reviews, but it does apply to so many different things, honestly. Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out as well. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe, but if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.